It was holiday time on the island of Soda. All the engines were working hard and happily. Except James. Why should a splendid engine like me take messy coal trucks instead of coaches? Percy and Oliver should do it. They're not as important as I am. Thomas was cross. James, why don't you think about something or someone else for a change? You'll be surprised at how much better you'll feel if you do. Pah! Snorted James. Being important is the only thing for me to think about. And he puffed away in a cloud of steam. That plane's making a great deal of noise about something, said Percy to Oliver. His name is Tiger Moth, replied Oliver, and it's flying around telling everyone about the fur that's arriving today. What are you two doing here? The Fat Controller wants us to pick up a very special load from the... Flying around telling everyone about the fur that's arriving today. What are you two doing here? The Fat Controller wants us to pick up a very special load from the harbour. And I think it's got something to do with the... wants us to pick up a very special load from the harbour. And I think it's got something to do with the fair, added Percy. Then they puffed away. Meanwhile, James was collecting quarry trucks from the yard. Josiah, he grumbled. Then he saw his friend, Mrs. Kindly. She looks miserable. What's the matter? Asked James's driver. My sister has rung to tell me she can't come to stay with me. I was so looking forward to her visit. The Fat Controller soon heard the sad news. We must cheer her up. Send out the helicopter to pick her up immediately. A few minutes later, there was a surprise for Mrs. Kindly. All present and correct, called Harold. I'm here on a flying visit. Hurry aboard, Mrs. Kindly, and fly the sky with me. Compliments of the Fat Controller. Ooh, how lovely. Harold's made my head paint justier than ever, muttered James, but he was happy for Mrs. Kindly. Soon she was flying high in Harold. I've never seen the island like this before. It's wonderful, she said. Meanwhile, Percy and Oliver had arrived at the docks. Cranky the crane was unloading an old tramp steamer. Hey, down there, you two! I'm playing Lucky Dip in the Tramper's Hole, and all of these are for you. Wooden horses, Percy exclaimed, for the carousel ride. It's going to be a very exciting fair. It is indeed, whistled James. The Fat Controller has ordered me to stop pulling coal trucks and go to the station instead. Something to do with Mrs. Kindly. Goodbye. Well, what do you think of that? Gasped Percy. Mrs. Kindly was waiting for James with the Fat Controller. Now this is your very special treat. James will take you on a mystery ride, and I shall meet you at your destination. James took Mrs. Kindly along her favourite coastal route to Tidmouth Bay. When the horizon was dark, a big surprise awaited Mrs. Kindly. "Oh," she cried, "you've brought me to the fairground. How lovely!" Best of all, the Fat Controller invited her to make the announcement, "I declare this fairground open." The side stalls lit up and Mrs. Kindly had the first ride on the carousel. "You were quite right, Thomas," James whispered. "Making someone happy does cheer you up." Then together they watched the fun of the fair.